So we'll kick this right off. I'm going to hit the mute button on everybody. If anyone wants anything to say throughout, please do unmute yourselves. So let's kick this off. So welcome to the Boston Office 365 user group. We see a lot of new names here today as well. So welcome and thanks for joining. We do host this monthly and we do broadcast this live every single month. So you're welcome to join us even if you don't live in the Boston area. So just a little bit about the organizers. So I myself were one of the three organizers. I work for Turn Digital as a partner. We also have Mike Dixon with Wellington Street Consulting and David Pileggi with with Staples, where he's an Office 365 engineer. So for those of you that were able to join us last time, Chris Bortlick gave a great presentation about getting ready for Project Cortex. If you have not, that will be on our YouTube channel fairly soon. We're a little backed up, we're about 2 months behind, but we're cranking through those edits to get it live and ready for you guys. So that being said, we have just a few updates we'd like to share in terms of what's been announced or released since we've last met. Of course, this doesn't cover everything, but it does cover a few things that we as the organizers thought might be of interest. So the first part is that Microsoft's large gallery view, allowing up to 49 participants, is starting to roll out, and it's expected to be available sometime by the end of August. So keep an eye out for that for your tenant, and I'm certainly looking forward to it myself. There's also a new mode, which is called Together mode, which really crops your head and shoulders out of your video stream and really puts you together to make it look a little bit more lifelike. So this also has a soft target of September of this year. Another pretty cool feature that's being released into public preview with OneDrive is the ability for you to take any folder that has been shared with you and add a shortcut so that it comes up into your My Files. That way you can more easily get to files and folders that you access frequently, even if they don't live inside of your OneDrive. So this is also going to be generally available by the end of September. Another pretty neat feature is that if you've ever synced a library that had required managed metadata or metadata in general, those items would always be synced down as read-only because the OneDrive client didn't have the capability to go and apply metadata. Now there's some updates that are happening, and specifically with some of the required columns not being really required. So now you'd be able to edit those documents offline as well. So this is something that's going to be rolling out pretty soon. That should be out by the end of next month. Another cool feature is really kind of the equivalent of the freeze panes feature in Excel that's now coming to SharePoint lists. So you'll be able to freeze a column, and as you scroll through other various columns, it'll keep the first column in place. So great if you're managing projects or tasks that have a lot of columns without having to jump back and forth quite a bit. This is also being released by the end of September. Another pretty cool feature that's being brought to modern is the ability to connect web parts. This is a feature that I think a lot of people may have used in Classic, where you had one list where you have a master data set and you have a child data set where you filter things down further. So this is now starting to become available with the brand name of dynamic list filtering. And this is something that's starting to get released right now for the targeted release tenants. And by the end of this month, this should be available in all tenants. So another branding / marketing rename. So the Planner app inside of Teams is now going to be updated to Tasks. And this update will be starting to roll out about this time frame that we're in right now, and it will be completed by the end of August. So if you see a name change, don't panic. It's still the same app. It's just got a new name to it now. Another major announcement was that SharePoint 2010 workflows are retiring fairly soon. As many of you know, SharePoint 2010 workflows can still do some things that 2013 workflows could not. So if you were using any of those legacy workflows, now is the time to take action. If you go to the link at the bottom of this slide, Microsoft has released a tool that lets you scan your tenant to find all of the legacy items that you have in your tenant, including these workflows. So this should be a pretty easy way to identify if you will be impacted, and if so, you can start working on that now. Another announcement that came out was this new app called Microsoft Lists. As you can see here with the preview screenshot, looks very similar to Forms and Flow, where you have the ones that you're working on favorited at the top, as well as recent ones below it. This is Microsoft really abstracting all of that feature set behind a list into its own standalone app that doesn't necessarily have to be part of a site. So this is going to be coming out later this month and ultimately available to everybody before the end of this year. So thanks to Turn Digital for being our platinum sponsor and ensuring that our user group overhead costs are covered. Without our sponsors in general, we wouldn't be able to put this on. So thanks to all of our sponsors. That being said, I'm going to pass this on to the main event, which is producing live events with teams. And we have a great cast for you here that are ready to walk us through a bit in terms of a case study of a recent event that they've hosted, and hopefully you'll learn a thing or two. So with that being said, Joel, I'm going to pass it over to you. Feel free to unmute yourself. The stage is yours.
There we go. And yeah, all right. Here we are. All right. So it would be great to be able to say, for a show of hands, who heard about the Microsoft 365 Virtual Marathon. But even though we have the raise hand feature, it's not going to work in this case.
Well, Joel, we've got
Let's try it.
Going up with people raising hands. So
okay, all right. Everybody, raise your hand. How many people heard of the Microsoft 365 Virtual Marathon? You're going to have to tell me the number, though.
That's a lot of hands. That's a lot of hands.
Lots of hands.
19 right now.
All right. Out of 33 attendees, that's not bad. So that's 2/3. I'll take that as just about everybody. So for those who didn't, Microsoft 365 Virtual Marathon was, I'm going to call it, the largest community event run on Teams live events ever. We're still waiting for somebody to beat our record, but it was an awesome event, and I want everybody on our panel today to talk, to introduce themselves. I'm Joel Oleson. You could say I've been working with this kind of tech since since the Microsoft SharePoint early days. Worked at Microsoft for about 7, 8 years, plus some time as a contractor and as a business guest in Building 35. Anyway, about 10 years at Microsoft with all that. And I work as a director at Proficient, working in the modern workplace technologies in the Microsoft national practice. And I'll hand it over to, to Ryan to introduce himself.
Sure, I'll go first. My name is Ryan Scouton. I've been working with SharePoint and Office 365 for quite a while, also at Office Apps and Services MVP. It was a fun time helping work with these guys to coordinate the virtual marathon, and spoilers, we're doing it again. So keep an eye out for that.
Awesome. And let's go Galen next. Is Galen on?
Yeah, he's here, but he's muted.
He was on earlier.
Why don't you take it, Jeff? We'll have Galen figure out his mute issue.
Sure. Hey, Jeff Willinger, Jay Willie, great to be here. Boston. Actually the best SharePoint Saturday of all time was in Boston. And Dave, I don't know if you were there. It's when Talbot had all this extra money and we're at Legal, and we're just ordering lobster rolls and Dom Perignon. Like, I think we all had our own bottle that night. I had at least 2.
Wow.
It was a memorable. Was anyone on the call at that SharePoint Saturday? It was a speaker dinner. So I don't know if any of you guys that are on, it was the best, literally. Anyway, I'm a native New Yorker. I went to undergrad at University of Rhode Island, so that's my whole New England connection. I'm at Fujitsu Computer Products now. For those of you that don't know, still in the SharePoint ecosystem because I'm selling scanning technology. I'm not actually selling, I'm like an evangelist. And my job is really to promote our scanners. We're going to be in the MTC as soon as it opens up. in Burlington. And, you know, our scanners are really the entree, the on-ramp to Project Cortex and really this whole idea of digital transformation. And I don't know, it's a great job. It's a great company. And I love scanners. So thanks for having us.
Yeah, I want to share some quick Boston stories. So I've actually spoken at the Boston user group, I think 3 times, as well as at least 2 SharePoint Saturdays in Boston. So I do spend a lot of time in Boston. In fact, it was the Boston Tech Ed in 2006, I think it was, that I actually consider it as the birth of the community. Like you could say, yeah, there were early MVPs or whatever, but no, I think the real birth of it was actually in Boston, for reals. There was we went out to the baseball game or the baseball stadium there, and it was amazing. And had drinks with Spence, who thought I was drinking, and I wasn't drinking, he was. I was drinking orange juice or pineapple juice.
We've
or something.
Never had that happen, Joel.
Yeah. But that was an incredible event. Yeah, that's when I first hung out with Shane Young. Yeah, some really good times in Boston, and absolutely some of the best karaoke I've ever done in my life. With your host here, so it's awesome.
It was absolutely brilliant, and if everyone must know, we actually went to obscure who we ended up battling out, and he ended up bringing out Phantom of the Opera. And so I had to one-up him and brought out My Fair Lady.
Some good times. I can't wait to get back to Boston. Fantastic food, beautiful environment. Yeah, love it there.
You almost moved out here, didn't you?
I actually did look at houses. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. All right, let's get this going. So we want to talk about what we're going to do is we're going to kind of mix it up. So we're going to talk about
Galen is here, by the way, Joel, if we want to let him introduce himself.
Galen. Yeah, Galen, jump in, please.
Yes. Sorry for not being off of mute earlier. Kind of hard to come after Mr. Willinger there. My name is Galen Keene. I work as a consultant in the collaboration space, like most of you that are on the call. So I focus on the Microsoft 365 stack, and I work as an architect and engineer for a professional services company out on the West Coast, Butterfly Technologies. Very active in the community, president of the San Diego SharePoint user group, or Office 365 user group, Microsoft 365 user group. Had a lot of fun with the guys on the marathon, and glad to be here this evening.
Yeah, thanks, Galen. So I want you to focus on the picture there on the right for a second before we jump into the agenda. So you can see the 4 of us, but you see 2 other pictures. You'll see Jackie and Lyman, who basically those are the if you ever wondered who's behind the scenes at SPC, Jackie and Lyman. You may know Lyman from his connection with Dan. Yeah, and then we've got Jackie, and then behind the scenes is Shirley, who's usually on voice. But basically that's kind of who was organizing things. You could say that Ryan, Galen, and I were kind of, I consider us executive producers of the event. Jay Willie was definitely kicking the, what do you say? Like kicking the tires, making sure things were working, keeping us on our toes. He was also monitoring the social.
Sky Fantastic. What is that? What is that Fantastic? The fill in the blank.
Fantastic Four.
No, the blank Fantastic. I'm gonna look it up while you're choosing me, Joel.
All right. So anyway, Jeff was kind of monitoring social. He actually had lined up a number of different sessions. So right as we were getting things going, Jeff had a session right at the beginning. So we were kind of figuring out how things were working right as he was doing it. He was our host. We actually had the bash at his place, which worked really well. It was a 36-hour event where it was basically nonstop, and we'll talk about that. But basically, for the agenda, we want to talk about our event, how we did it, how it went, what it's like to produce live events, what we learned. I'm actually going to start kind of backwards. We're going to start with the architecture of live events, period. But we want to open it up for Q&A, and there's probably some moments along the way where if people have questions, Ryan, Galen, Jeff, any of them can be watching for questions that come in the chat, and we can integrate it into the conversation, because we will very likely run out of time. We have a lot to say. PowerPoint doesn't want to cooperate again. All right, so let's first start off with live events. There's really, inside of the product, there's really a couple different ways to do this. You can do it on Stream, you can do it on Yammer, or on Teams. And there are some slight differences, and we want to dig into that a little bit. Basically, your organizer creates the event. They are the organizer. And that role of organizer is actually quite important, especially when you're running an event that goes over 24 hours, especially when somebody needs to go to sleep. Real world scenario, we realized that only the organizer could change some settings on the actual event itself. So even if you're a producer, you can't change who the other producers are. It requires the organizer. So we actually told Ryan, hey, Ryan, stay logged in. So one thing to be aware of, for an event that's like 8 hours, not a big deal, but hey, if somebody gets hit by a bus, you got to be careful about who the organizer is and what you're using for that account. But understood, if you're using Stream, that's internal. If you're using Yammer, that's internal. For our case, we wanted to have external presenters, basically guest presenters. And we wanted anonymous attendees to be able to access it. So imagine running Boston SharePoint Saturday or Boston M365 or Boston Teams event, whatever it happens to be. Imagine running that on top of a tenant. And the tenant we actually used was Ryan Scouten, his MVP tenant, which basically gets 5 users. So when we talk about us being able to help him and assist, he did give us accounts in his tenant. So all of us exec producers had valid, internal accounts. But normally, all of our other producers, and we had more than 50 producers, they were guest accounts, as well as our more than 350 or so speakers, and we'll get to those. We're also guest accounts. So pretty interesting in terms of consuming licenses and who can do what from that perspective. There are a number of technologies and partners in this space, especially as it relates to, say, the Yammer or Stream feed, where you can use OBS, or you can use camera equipment where it comes in as an RTMP device or feed that can then come back in and be produced through Stream, Yammer, or Teams. So basically, you've got your organizer, you've got your producer, you've got your presenter. We'll talk a little bit about this, but essentially from a cloud perspective, there's things to optimize the network using CDNs, the Content Delivery Network, or Azure Media Services. For our case, we were pushing it over the web, where we couldn't necessarily leverage any CDNs other than what Microsoft naturally has built into it, since it wasn't on a corporate network. But most customers very likely would have CDNs or some kind of network for optimization when you've got an all hands, all employees for a super large company. In fact, I think Dave Pelleggi, do you guys use something in that
Absolutely.
space?
We do use Hive. When we first did the Skype for Business broadcast back 3 years ago, before live events, it was even created, we actually blew out 3 T1s and blew out our network with our first all hands. So yeah, Hive is what we're using.
Totally understood. Yeah. I'm pretty sure that I was at a Microsoft session where the Hive person was up there talking with them as well. But shout out to Ramp. They're actually in Boston, right? Does anybody know Ramp?
I
Yes,
think
Ramp is in
yeah.
Boston.
Yeah. Shout out to the local folks. So that's pretty cool too. OBS is actually a free piece of software. I don't know a lot about the company themselves, but OBS, at least as far as I know, there is a download that you can actually use for being able to do OBS Studio. And Ryan Scouten regularly was actually streaming our user group using OBS so that he could show the slides, show the speaker, and running it from a camera. So like basically, you want to talk about the setup you were using for the user group, Brian?
Sure. For our user group, we ended up using, like I said, OBS to handle the streaming portion. We have done streaming to Teams meetings and Teams live events, as well as YouTube streams as well.
Right.
We ended up having a capture screen, actually a display capture device that, as people plugged in, it just did a pass through to the so they can plug in their HDMI connection. We captured it, plus it also did a pass through out to the projector. So that way we had the exact same content everybody was seeing on the screen, and then we had the slides come through for everything else. So it was fairly simple, and then we just passed it through OBS to adjust and what content we wanted to.
Cool. Now, from a viewing perspective, and this is where there are some nuance, when you're an organizer or producer or presenter / speaker, you need to be in the rich Teams client if you're doing the Teams thing. If you are an attendee, you can do it on mobile, you can do it in the web, you can do it online, any variety. Basically, you can pick and choose if you're an attendee, but your producers cannot be in the web or on mobile. Same with speakers. You need your speakers to be in the rich client. So that's important to be aware of. So one other thing is like Teams meetings versus Teams live events. What are some of the differences? Well, and it'll be interesting to see how this changes over time. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but basically today, you get max. Is it 300 today, or is it still 250?
300.
It's 300. All right.
Yep.
So we get 300 with plans to go to 1,000. We're talking about that. Anyway, it's going up eventually. So we get the max 300 attendees for Teams meetings with plans for the product team to increase that number. When you talk about Teams live events, it went from 10,000 attendees recently to 20,000 attendees. So much, much larger scale events, more like webinar style events, where Teams meetings, absolutely great for interactivity. In fact, when we were talking about setting up this event, our team was like, hey, yeah, we really, really want to use meetings because we want the interactivity. We want the attendees to be able to talk. We want that not just people doing Q&A and moderated Q&A, but we want full-on chat capabilities. We want full-on interactivity with people being able to come off mute and actually talk, where that is the Teams meeting. So you could say rich, interactive, impromptu, reoccurring, simple, where your Teams live events are often, it's one time, it is fairly structured, where you have multiple roles. It's very scaled up. You got your different thousands of participants. Your attendees can be on a variety of different devices, meant for kind of that one-to-many type of experience. Really good for executive type presentations or the all hands. And then when you're looking for moderated Q&A, you don't have moderated Q&A in the Teams meetings either. So very different kind of experience. And when you talk about the typical way you're producing, even it's it's an optional to have a video on the side, and then you basically have what you're presenting on the other side. So that could be a video, but essentially it's really just 2 templates without using some third-party tools. It's basically you got a video on one side and then your content, or it's all one big screen. All right. Yeah, okay. So the other thing I want to just talk about is these what's great about live events, the scale, the reach, and there's actually some kind of unique features as it relates to closed captions. And actually, I run into this one just this week. Somebody's like, "Oh yeah, we got closed captions in Teams. We ought to be able to do transcription and translation." I ran into this one this week where we were trying to figure out how do we do a Teams meeting and where I speak and they can actually see the text and then be able to choose what language it goes into. And I recently found out through trial and error that that's only available on live events as well. So basically, when you set up the live event, you pick and choose what languages you want to be available and enable the live captions, which is default to turn on those closed captions or at least make them available. It also does understand facial recognition, speaker recognition, so it has some of those things. Some of those, I guess, are in the in-video search, which comes with on some of the stream side as well. So with our event, we split the world up into 3 equal pieces, and it's some simple math for you, but it's kind of brilliant. There's 24 hours in the day. You can divide those 24 hours into 3 8-hour periods. So with our event, we wanted to basically be able to support the event in such a way that we could have support staff and producers and speakers where we could follow the sun. And so we had kind of our Americas, we had the APAC, and we had EMEA, Europe, Middle East, Africa. And I did check the box for audio, so you should be able to hear this hopefully.
Namaste. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I hope wherever you are keeping great, and welcome to Microsoft 365 Virtual Marathon. My name is Dipti Chhatrapati and I am Modern Workplace Architect at Applied Information Science, as well as I am Microsoft Regional Director. I live in Mumbai, India, and I'm very excited to join all of you in this long 36-hour event with continuous sessions on Microsoft 365, Microsoft Azure, and Power Platform coming from around 300 speakers from 46 countries. And apart from this, there is a separate community zone where you can meet and greet your friends, make new connections, play the games, and win the prizes. Thank you for joining here, and I wish you a very enjoyable time ahead.
So that was Dipti. Dipti actually joined us on most of our calls, dialing in from India the whole time. He basically working from her home. And we also had
皆さんこんにちは。平野愛です。今回日本語セッションのオーナーをしています。多くの方のご協力で日本語だけで14セッション実施できることになりました。このイベントをぜひ皆さんで楽しんでみてください。
Yeah. So I from Japan, and she's really important because she was one of our first real community kind of track managers on the Japanese side, who really dialed it in well. Basically, she in the beginning she was talking about, well, we can do our own event, and it was like, no, we don't want you to do your own event. We want you to do your event within our event. And so it was this really kind of cool Japanese track. In fact, there were actually a couple of Japanese tracks, and we ended up being able to have support 7 languages, and he was even. At one point, it was simultaneously. We had 7 languages going, plus the 15 English tracks that were all going at the same time. So we were 22 sessions wide at our widest point, which was like 4 a.m. on day 2. Kind of interesting. And as well, you can see Jana there in the middle. She was from Prague. She kind of helped support us from the European hours. But this entire team, basically, we were there one way or another across the 36 hours. We started kind of taking shifts somewhere around 2-3 a.m. And we had lots of language support: Portuguese, Korean, Spanish, German, Japanese, French. It really came together in a huge way. And the first thing that I think is kind of interesting to you guys is how this thing came to be. This absolutely was resulted from COVID. We were originally this same team. We were working on an event here in Orange County. We were going to run an M365 event, and we kind of pushed it out, and we're talking about our event coming up, and one of the people on the committee says, "Hey, we should just cancel this event." And it was dropping off the calendar, and I was like, wait, we could do this virtually. And so we all got on the horn and started discussing it. And it was fantastic to have Jeff, Galen, and Ryan and myself all basically say, yeah, let's do this. And let's actually push the limits of Microsoft Teams. So an early discussion was, how many simultaneous sessions can Teams support? And the answer was 15. And so we said, well, how many hours are there in the day if we were to kind of go around the sun? And we figured out, oh, well, we could probably do about 300 sessions at peak. And then Microsoft released some updates. Oh, no, you can have 20,000 attendees. Your event duration could be 16 hours, and you can have 50 concurrent events. So with that, we were like, hey, why do we even need limits? We can actually increase this all the way up. And then it became a question of, well, how can we support this from a producer perspective? And since this was a lot of our first time doing a full-on event like this, we knew it was going to be a challenge. But one call to action for those of you who are looking at this, at what we did, and saying, hey, I wouldn't mind doing an event on it. I do recommend this live assistant support from Microsoft. There's a form you can fill out. They recommend you contact them with at least 5 days before the live event starts. We were getting a little bit cocky, I guess. We had things really dialed in. We did have one conversation with Microsoft when things started to look like performance-related issues, and it did end up being an issue on their side, which was admitted both by Dan Holm and Caruana. And after that one hiccup, we were set and dialed in, and it was actually going really smooth. Not to spend a lot of time on this, but we absolutely wanted to do this for the community, by the community, make it absolutely inclusive, but we also wanted it to feel exclusive. Like people would want to be part of this event, or otherwise they'd feel left out. We wanted to kind of have people have that FOMO kind of experience of, oh, we want to be part of this thing. And just one quick stat for you. We had over 700 submissions of sessions. Every single speaker who submitted, we were able to bring them in. So I'm really proud about that in terms of inclusivity, bringing in people and languages and support. Being able to truly be a global event was really important to me and to our whole group. One of our desires really was to showcase the technology. We wanted this to be a real case study that people would want to talk about, and that as well. I think we've had 3-4 sessions with Microsoft directly, just talking about our experience and our feedback. So it was really worked well. And in terms of kind of being able to do this, speaking at user groups, sharing what we learned so much, and it's great. It's great to be here. All right, let's dig in a little bit deeper. Here's what we ended up doing. And you can see down the bottom, Jeff Tieper was he was the one who helped us kick it off. He was our keynote. Naomi, John Levesque, Bill Bear, Caruana, Chris McNulty. We had a really good lineup of Microsoft speakers. In fact, we had so many Microsoft speakers, we decided we weren't going to just do one keynote or 2 keynotes or one keynote every morning and one every night. We decided we were going to do a keynote every 4 hours and then do breakout sessions after every keynote. So it's kind of a unique setup. And basically taking advantage of the hours, we don't want to make it too confusing. So basically each session would be 50 minutes with a 10-minute break. Some of those, obviously, people would push it a little bit, but you can see as well how well distributed the speakers were across the world and how well our audiences were distributed. Our top track was actually, in terms of sessions, was business, then administration, then development. A lot of power user. So if you combine that with business, man, we had over 150 sessions related to business and power user and end user, over 200 sessions, if you look at it that way. So lots of sessions that not your traditional Microsoft event. Our technology stack, and this is where I want to definitely bring Ryan into this conversation. We're talking about our attendee registration system was built on Eventbrite. We use Sessionize for speaker management. We talk about our scheduling system was actually built through Sessionize as well, but it was actually GitHub Pages that was actually the event site itself, supporting the speaker bios, the schedule, and we took what was there and we kind of envisioned what the platform, what we would like it to do. We wanted a schedule that was interactive, where you could click to join a session or you could click to add it to your calendar. We wanted a schedule that you could, click on it and be able to see, and we wanted filters and kind of a rich interface. We'll come back to that because I want Ryan to actually demo that. But for marketing, we used social media and spsevents.org. The delivery platform is absolutely Teams. We use Team Live Events for the sessions. We use Teams meetings for our panels, our Ask the Experts, the vendor booths that we did support. And then it was our backup. If we had problems with Teams Live Events, which happened in one case, it was like 3-4 sessions. We ended up during a single block. We went that path. We used Microsoft Forms with QR codes for feedback surveys. Really loved the NPS score, and you'll see some of that a little bit later. tyGraph gave us sentiment and reach, and then AltSpace VR, as well as we did some Teams meetings, but for the community zone. So basically, we had over 100 people who joined via AltSpace VR for a total of 400 sessions. So people would come and then they'd go to a session and then they'd come back and so on. So we had a lot of kind of cool interactivity that happened in the VR space as well at our event. And I think, yeah, why don't you take it over, Ryan?
Alrighty. So yeah, as Joel mentioned, we're trying to figure out the most cost-effective way, because when we were starting out with planning this event, we had a whopping budget of 0. So we tried to find the way that would get us the most bang for the buck without spending a lot of bucks. So what we came up with was going with GitHub Pages, because it's something that's included with GitHub repositories. So we just stored our content in GitHub, and then as we're checking in the changes, the content would get pushed out to the website and everything was up and running. So as we can see here, we have the site that was used with some basic information. As Joel mentioned, we did find in the content from Sessionize to be able to get speaker bios and all those sort of things, as Sessionize ended up being our content source for all information about sessions and speakers. Looks like it's, there we go. It's still, there it goes, now found loaded. So we have all the information here about all our speakers, they did, all that sort of stuff. Also, one of the things we included a Power BI report that embeds and shows where all of our speakers came from. So we have speakers from all over the world. Guarantee you, we didn't have a speaker came from this far north in Canada. It's just one of those things. The only location we had for that speaker was Canada, so that's just where it ends up putting it. But kind of gives you a nice little representation of where our speakers came from. And then if we go back up, some of the other things like sessions is fairly basic. Where people spent most of their time was on the schedule. And I know Joel will show some of the stuff. We have some screenshots of just to show how big this thing ended up being. But we ended up using Sessionize's out-of-the-box rendering for the sessions, and then we added in some extra pieces to make it a little easier to consume. So for example, we can say, hey, we want to look at this Microsoft Teams 101 session. If we click on it, we have the basic rendering. We did add in a language flag there so people can easily tell what language it was in. Plus, we also added an indicator whether a session was going to be made available afterwards, whether it was going to be recorded, because some speakers, due to legal, contractual, whatever requirements, would prefer their content not to be posted afterwards. So we also gave them a nice big easy join button, which as of right now, if you go to the site and the schedule, the join button will take you to the actual YouTube location where that video is stored. So works out really nicely. We kind of changed the links up afterwards as we've gone through and processed it. So at this point in time, we're kind of, all the videos should be out there. We're kind of doing spot checks to make sure things that we may have missed, or because there were some sessions that did not get recorded just due to technical problems. As Joel mentioned, the problem early on when we started the event did cause some problems. So there are some sessions that may not have made it. So we're working through that and just kind of spot checking, make sure we got them all. And yeah, the site was able to handle 30,000 plus requests over the couple days of the event without a hiccup. It's just super fast, just HTML and JavaScript. So it worked out really well.
Awesome. So any questions? I think it's a good point to like make a tiny little break for questions. You know, one of the things that I think is important to kind of note is that if you're trying to do an event on Microsoft Teams, even live events, the thing you're going to notice is missing is the information about your speakers, is the information about your sessions. Now, if it's a very small event, obviously you can just send it via Outlook to everybody. When Microsoft did MVP Summit, they decided, you know, obviously they weren't expecting COVID, but they decided they were going to do MVP Summit as a virtual event, and they sent out a zip file of like 300 or a couple hundred ICS files. So you can imagine trying as an attendee, trying to do searches across ICS files of what sessions you want to go to. Yeah, no, nothing against Microsoft in terms of that interface, but as an attendee, I don't want to add 300 or a few hundred sessions to my calendar to try and figure out what sessions I want to go to. So it was important to build an interface like this. But at the same time, Sessionize definitely allowed it to be a lot easier for us. But that ability to take the JSON that Sessionize produced and then be able to add our join links, which basically your ability to add a custom tag, custom field, really wasn't that challenging. I wouldn't say. And Ryan, the one who actually built this, it ended up saving us, because the idea is if we had a problem with a room, or we had a problem with a speaker who didn't show up, or even if we knew 15 minutes beforehand that the speaker says, hey, there's a cyclone in India, which actually happened in a few cases, we could actually yank the event, and it was kind of dynamic schedule as a result. So that was really quite powerful.
Hey, Joel, can you minimize me?
Yeah. Did you get any questions? We're good to proceed?
I think we're good at this point. Not seeing a whole lot of questions come through. Just kind of hitting them up as they come in.
One of my favorite things through the event was this Power BI report that one of the speakers actually built. One of the things I really wanted in the interface was a search interface, and they basically built a UI to our Sessionize data. So super powerful. You can sort all the sessions by language, by level, by track, by description, by title, by room, even time. You could pick a time and then just see all the sessions during that time. So that's super powerful. I don't have time to demo that one, but if you're interested in things that people have done with Power BI that almost seem like applications. This is a really good example of one that's actually one of my favorite Power BI things that I've ever seen. In terms of how we did, we had 12,774 people who registered for the event, and they were actually distributed fairly equally around the world. We had about 47% in the Americas, 33% in EMEA, and 20% in APAC. When you look at that and look at Eventbrite, 7% of our attendees actually came through Eventbrite, which really surprised me, with our top 3 cities being all in India. Pretty fascinating. And yeah, the product team absolutely was very interested in our experience and trying to share that with other people who are trying to do similar things now. In our event, we did have some specialized roles. So we had the organizer who actually set up the events. And one thing in terms of being aware of setting up, poor Ryan manually had to set up every single session. Now, we did make a critical decision that instead of having every single session be its own event, we created these 8-hour blocks. Like you saw, we divided up the world in these 8-hour blocks. So what we could do is we could create an 8-hour block to be able to then run our sessions that way. We'll dive a little bit more into that as things go, but basically that did end up being both a serious help in terms of being able to simplify the creation of the events, but it added some extra pressure on the producers and speakers from a perspective of, you're going to join and there's already, if you're not speaker number 1, you're speaker number 2, that session has already started, or that particular block has already started. You need to join and then be quiet until their session is over. And then it's going to stay live all 8 hours. So anyway, that takes us off track a little bit, but hopefully gives you a feel for what we did in our case. A lot of events, they're going to set up those individual sessions, and as of today, you can't script the creation of live events. It's something you actually have to do in the UI. Teams meetings, yeah, there's the ability to do those things via PowerShell, but there's no API right now for live events. So in our organization, we had what we would call, at least I was calling them executive producers. There was Ryan, Galen, and myself who basically would sit on sessions, make sure that they stayed live, and as well, we would check on any rooms to make sure things were working as appropriately. Like I said, we had 50 volunteer producers who were actually producing about 3/4 of the events that we had. And then there was about 1/4 of them that still needed to have producers. So we would jump in those rooms, help people get started, help the transitions for those second and third sessions and so on, just to keep things moving along. We also had, like you saw with those foreign languages, we had track owners, and they would help us kind of have this kind of dual leadership for foreign tracks, where we could focus on the platform. They could manage their volunteers, their producers, their speakers, and we would kind of work with them on how that schedule should go. Now, I'm going to dig in on the producers. In fact, it's Galen we're going to hand it over to talk about producers. And I want Jeff to talk about what we were doing community-wise and talk about the chat kind of stuff in just a second, just to give him a heads up. On the speakers, they were basically presenting audio, video using live events, and then they would moderate their own Q&A, or the producer could moderate the Q&A. One little difficulty, if you're a speaker and you're sharing your screen, you actually can't see the Q&A panel. So you have to actually kind of jump out of it to then open up Q&A. So it is nicer to have a producer. It's definitely a much better experience to have a producer who can ask the questions to the speaker, so that you can have a nice screen up that shows your contact information or the final slide or that kind of thing. We did have our producers, we did producer training, and we're going to dig into a little bit of that. But before we do, these roles we were talking about, basically, when you've got 22 rooms going on simultaneously, a lot of them that have producers, other rooms that don't have producers, and some rooms where we used Galen's virtual desktops to sit on sessions, because ultimately we needed all of those sessions to have somebody in them at all times. And you say, well, what do you mean you have to have somebody in them? Well, even if there happened to be a blank in a track where there wasn't a session, if we didn't have somebody sitting in that room, the room would actually go dark. It would close. And if we went in there to go reopen it, it would say, sorry, this meeting is ended. And with live meetings, you can't actually restart them. Once it is ended, it is over. It's kaput. So that's quite important. So talking about production, and we're going to hand this over to Galen now. But basically, us as organizers, executive producers, we only had to deal with 32%. We had 50 producers who handled 68% of the sessions that we had. There were 5 exec producers, 50 producers, and 5 of them that did 9+ sessions. We're talking 11 hours of producing. And most of these producers, this was the first time they were producing ever. And they basically learned how to be a producer with a single session. So it's really not something too difficult to learn how to do. And actually, I'm going to jump ahead to the demo. We'll come back. Why don't you talk about what it's like producing, Galen? If you're there. You want to share your screen? And
You're still
there you
muted,
go.
Galen.
Still muted, yeah.
Hey guys, thank you,
Hey.
Joel.
Yeah.
Is that you, Galen? Okay.
All right. So, as Joel was talking about, many of the sessions were produced by volunteers. And what you can see on my screen, let me zoom in just a little bit. This is basically all of the sessions that we had occurring, including English and foreign languages. All of the purple boxes you see represents a session that was produced by an executive producer, one of us. Everything else was was produced on a volunteer basis. So all of our volunteers submitted via Microsoft Forms to be a producer. And what we did was conduct some training. The day before the event, we had 3 separate training sessions. And in these training sessions, we reviewed a guide that was written that enabled our producers to interact both with each other, us as executive producers, but with the presenters or speakers in each of the section, the blocks, if you will, that they were producing. So remember that Joel described that we broke the event down into these 8-hour blocks. And essentially what you have happening in that 8-hour block is the first hour is a keynote, followed by 3 one-hour sessions, or 3 50-minute sessions, really. And we asked our producers to produce one block, one group of 3 sessions. So basically they would come online as a keynote was ending. They would produce a minimum of 3 hours worth of content and then be done. Some of those producers, as Joel stated, produced over 11 hours worth of content. Some of them produced over 11 and spoke. So we had some true marathon runners in the producer field. But this guide, like I said, we wrote this guide, and it includes training on what to do from a speaker perspective in terms of how to interact with the UI, what not to press, right? Never hit the red end button. Joel will go into that in a little more detail in a moment. But it spoke about prerequisites about having to use the Teams client when you're producing an event. And a tip here is logging into the tenant or joining the org through Teams that's hosting the event. In this case, the SharePoint Night organization. That's Ryan's MVP tenant that we spoke about earlier. So joining that organization through Teams, and then clicking on the Join Live Event link in your calendar item for the block of sessions that you're going to produce. So very, easy things, kind of prereq things that you have to do. But those steps unfortunately were missed for some of our speakers, but it was something we were able to recover from quickly with these instructions. In addition to that, we had some producer decks that I'll display in just a moment. But as Joel stated, we had that block of time where you might have speakers joining while somebody else is finishing up their presentation. So we have this 3-hour block. If you are the second speaker, you're joining a live event where somebody is speaking, right? And so our timings, these what I call live event timings, assisted our producers with welcoming in speakers that might be joining the live event that's in progress, right? And what to communicate to the speaker that's coming in, and how to validate that things are working. What's really important to remember about Teams meetings and Teams live events is that there are content streams and there's video streams. You can see my video, you can hear my audio after I went off of mute, right? But I'm sharing my screen, and if somebody else that's in a presenter role in this meeting begins to share their screen, it's automatically going to override my screen that I'm sharing. Same's true in a live event. So it's something that, I think Microsoft is aware of now. How do we, in this kind of back channel way, enable the presenter, the upcoming presenter and a producer to kind of do a tech check while the event is happening? We had to really, it was very important, the tech checks that were run prior to the event to make sure that everything's working. But these, like I said, these timings came in or played a role in enabling our producers to be successful in this regard. And like Joel said, many of our producers were producing events for the first time. Outside of these things, there's other scenarios and procedures that we documented and put into this guide to make it as easy on our producers as possible to ensure that our speakers had a successful event. But in addition to that was a section at the end where we had a bunch of unplanned scenarios that might come up. Things like, the speaker's join link doesn't work. How can you pull a speaker into the live event when they're saying, hey, I'm trying to join and I can't make this happen? There's tricks to that, as long as the speaker is using the Teams client and they're in the org, you can call them as an example from the meeting. They'll see the notification that you're calling them, and as soon as they answer that call, it'll suck them into the live event, right? It'll join them to the live event in session. That was used many times to help speakers out. In addition to that, wherever we may have experienced technical difficulties, or a speaker said, hey, I'm having some issue, I have a network issue, I'll be right there. We had various ways to kind of recover from that and also make sure that our attendees were aware of what's happening. And that was done via these producer decks that we created. We enabled our producers to kind of fill this out, customize it as appropriate for them, because we wanted our producers to let their personality shine to some degree in the event. So they would moderate the Q&A session for the speaker, but they would also be able to show this deck in between sessions. So in the event that there was an unplanned scenario, you might see a slide come up from this deck that said we're having technical difficulties or what have you. So again, for us, we went through 1 hour training sessions the day before the event. We had 3 of them. That helped out our producers immensely. It helped out our speakers that attended the producing sessions as well, so that they would know what the producers were going to be doing when they joined the live events. And like I said, it helped resolve any issues and address any challenges that we experienced along the way. Back to you, Joel.
Galen, you became very popular very quickly with that particular document. There's a lot of requests for that document. Just letting you know.
Yeah, and I think we'll talk about how to share these resources and what we did. And like Joel said, it's by the community for the community, so it doesn't stop when when the event stopped. You're on mute, Joel.
You're still muted, Joel.
Sorry, that's me. I keep on muting him. I'm just kidding. I gotta get out of here. I gotta get out of here.
I'm not shocked.
Unmute in Teams, Joel.
Yeah.
I gotta get down.
There you go.
I was seeing if I could do it without having to cancel sharing.
I was gonna just start sharing just to see if that was really true. Sharing one of my Fujitsu decks.
Hey, while we're on this screen, Jeff, do you want to talk about how we did?
We did pretty good. To me, the number, 12,000 attendees, people that registered to date, at that point before build, as far as just a community event, as far as I know, it was the largest single event that Microsoft ever, or that Teams ever hosted, and that Microsoft ever had as far as virtual. Again, not a Microsoft event, just a community event, number one. 31,000 views, 26,000 web pages, 410 sessions with 350 speakers. I happened to do 3 of those. I kicked it off, and then I also did one at midnight Pacific time. You guys we're all going to have to get used to this new normal of presenting. In this case, at least I'm getting some feedback, right away, and I could see you guys, but I wasn't able to see who was in my session many times. And you're just talking to a computer, and you're hoping that you somehow have the energy that people don't tune out, which is a very, I think that moving forward, I'm a big fan of the 30-minute session as opposed to a 50-minute session when it comes to virtual. Just my opinion, our attention spans are like 10 seconds, right? Guys, more like 5 seconds. I'm exaggerating, of course, but we're all distracted, right? We minimize these things, and if something is interesting, we bring it up. Look, I know it's okay. Even all of you that are not looking at these statistics, I get it. We have to be more interesting. We have to get to the point quicker. And I could speak for Joel, because Joel and I are both storytellers, and we love telling stories, but we need to get to the point quicker. I've actually had feedback at SharePoint user groups and other conferences that I spoke at. I love talking. You guys are listening to me right now. Joel loves to talk, right? We both do. The two of us together, forget it, in the same room. One of us has to give, right? Anyway, so we have to get to the point quicker. 69,000 sessions were viewed. Amazing. 145. This is based on TieGraph. Joel, we talk about this all the time.
One other thing I want you to talk about just briefly is how do you make vendors happy? Here we're trying to do a big event, and we were trying to raise some money for some nonprofits. And as well, you had SPC that had some massive bills in Vegas.
Yeah, so how do you do that? So again, our first time in teams, what I personally like to do, I like to walk, I like to make introductions at the end of the day. I want to make sure that every single vendor or partner, right, we're partners, gets their money's worth. So how do we do that? Give them some leads. It's more than just giving out a list, because the list is great. And maybe you are going to there are some nuggets in there, but how do you how do you turn those into actually business? And it's nice that they're supporting these types of events, but we have to make it worth their while. So moving forward, we have to put ourselves in their shoes and really think, well, what's in it for me? Why do I need to do this? Because look, SPC is a business. Us, me, Joel, Galen, and Ryan, we're community guys that, yeah, I'm probably the biggest business person out of our foursome, but at the end of the day, I don't like asking people for money, but if I do, I want to make sure that they get their money's worth. So it's really about making sure that the partners / vendors get their money's worth. We had different teams rooms. We did a raffle just to get engagement. I mean, anything we could do to make them happy, because we're going to probably do other versions of this in the future, and we would love their support. But it's really about doing something together that makes belonging matter. The reason why the 33 or 40 of us are together today is because belonging to this thing is bigger than just us, right? We're here to support each other, but we're also here to really better the community.
Absolutely.
That's all I've got.
So that's great. One quick thing here is that bottom left-hand corner, that little chart you're seeing there, that chart comes straight out of Teams. And I want to tell you about real briefly about Teams and the way that they do their tracking. So Teams and anonymous events, it is a disaster. It's really difficult to know exactly how many people are in the room. But one thing that you can do is go back and you get this attendance report. And the attendance report, it was pretty decent in terms of showing that somebody joined the room and then they left. So essentially across the sessions that we supported, again, we had about 12,700 and so people. But if you look at the 2 days, you can see in the Americas on day one, we had, or is that day two? Anyway, about 17,000 on either day. And essentially, it's counting how many people joined a session. So basically, if you were to look at that data, you could say, oh, the average person probably went to 3 or 4 sessions, which in my mind, that's actually pretty good, and that's assuming 100% attendance. We're probably talking 50% attendance, maybe 40%. Or we had all these anonymous users. When you look at the website, wow, 40,000 attendees or 40,000 users. Maybe we actually had a lot of people who came, and when their friends said, hey, you actually don't have to register, just click on the links. So it's possible that we actually had quite a few people. So one way or another, there were, 31,000, nearly 32,000 team events that were actually viewed one way or another. And there's these attendance reports the producers can go back in and download. There's a recording report, there's the recording, there's the Q&A report, the attendee engagement report, and the backup recording, which is great. And you can actually choose whether the recording is available for attendees. Since ours were external, didn't make any sense. So when you look at this across the width of all of the tracks, like I said, there were 14 English tracks plus, French had 1, Japanese had 2, Spanish had 2, and so on. So you had a lot of these other ones. But when you look at the reports here, this forms data down there at the bottom, this actually came out of one of the forms templates, the feedback template, which actually worked really quite well. We had a lot of people who were extremely satisfied. When you look at the Twitter sentiment from the TieGraph report as well, we had the highest score that they'd ever seen before, which was fantastic. And when you look at our speaker scores, look at that across 350 something people who actually or responses to the survey, 4.82 on average for how you'd rate the speaker. So we had some really good feedback there. What does it look like? I have a couple of visuals of what it actually looked like when you actually step back and look at it. This is day 1 in terms of sessions. So yeah, here's day 2. If it wants to come. Yeah, day 2, you can actually see the one where there's 22 all the way across, right at 4 a.m. or 7 a.m. Anyway. Yeah, I think it was 4. And couple. I want to make sure that you guys understand some things that when you do this, some things to be aware of. If you don't start the event, this is what the attendees experience is. The live event hasn't started. That's a pretty poor experience. I call it ugly text. You know, if you're an attendee and you see this, you're like, am I in the right place? You're going to be super confused. Is this the right event? Did I click the right link? How do I know that they're actually going to start it? It's kind of a rough experience. So my recommendations to producers is work things out with your speaker and then start early so people know that they are in the right place, and just have it on mute. You know, it's better to be ahead of time if you can. And obviously, Galen's awesome producer guide was pretty much saying the same thing. The Teams Admin Center, yeah, you can decide who gets to see it, who can record it, who gets to view it. So there's some policies that can help support that as well. As was mentioned earlier, if you're a producer or presenter, no, you can't use web or mobile. You have to use the desktop app, while attendees can. And yes, PC and Mac, no problem. Android, iOS for attendees. Didn't get a chance to try it on Linux myself, but might work for the browser, not sure. Some feedback. So when you have guest presenters, this might reinforce what you just heard, but the guest account must be in at least one team in the tenant hosting the live event. So basically, one of the things you may not have heard is we actually created this Teams environment. We were collaborating with our producers on one team. We were collaborating with our speakers on another team. And then we had a private channel for us organizers to basically bash through things and kind of work through things. And we also had a war room, which was basically was a meeting that any of our speakers could join. If, like, say they couldn't even get into the room, they could join into that war room and let us know. And we had one ear on that at all times. But ultimately, we were kind of watching the chats come in. Couple other things on feedback. Live end is permanent. That big red button, like Galen was saying, that was the bane of our existence. It was the first feedback I wanted to make sure the Microsoft heard, was that big red button was way too permanent. If you click it, that event will not come back. If it crashes and there's nobody in the room, it might not be there when you get back to it.
And it's one of those things that we ran into even as people familiar with live events and working with them. There's time frames, even myself, I found when I needed to go leave and jump to another room, I found myself just naturally gravitating to the big red end button. And then I have to remind myself, no, go back up to the top to leave. So it's just one of those things that understandably is there, but Microsoft has heard the feedback that they need to do something to improve that situation.
Yeah. Now, there's a lot of other feedback things. I think we've talked about most of these things. I'm just going to mention this one here. The need for scripting and APIs, that I would hope that that's something that does come as well. We've definitely given this feedback to Microsoft. The need for, say, back channel conversations when it's speaker 2 and everybody can hear you. Chat being only for, there's a number of these things. Yeah. With that, I here's some contact info if anyone wants to grab a quick screenshot for any follow-up. I do want to make a quick announcement about something that's coming up. So tell me if anybody wants me to not move, let me know. Okay. We can come back to that anyway if we need to. Yes. So after that amazing event, I was feeling like, oh man, I just had this incredible, I mean, the endorphins were amazing. Connecting with the global community over a very short period of time, seeing all these sessions and all these speakers kind of coming in and coming out, I was like, man, I need to do more stuff with the community. I want to just say, I want to connect with the community. So we decided we need to have a virtual community, especially during COVID, seriously. Well, we're going to launch a community, the global community for Microsoft 365. And we're actually going to do it not just with one party. We're going to have 3 parties. We're calling the APAC party the Rising Sun party. It will be 9 p.m. to midnight. It's not starting at midnight. It's 9 p.m. to midnight. Actually, the reason I wrote midnight is because East Coast time, it's going to be midnight. So that'll be a late party for you guys, but it's going to be fairly early for people in Dubai, if you think about it that way. So it works. It works its way out. We're going to do one on the front end of Ignite, the EMEA party. We're calling that one Apex. And then the post-Ignite party, we're calling Nightfall, which absolutely the hours will be nice and great for you guys on the East Coast. But basically, before the keynote, after the keynote, or after the last session. So you can kind of see what we're doing there with Ignite. I mean, if you've been to Ignite, there's so much about the energy and the ability to network and the parties. I'm hoping that this really helps out with the global community. What are we planning? We've got some music acts planned with Joey Snow, summertime mixes. We've got the music of Keith Ritchie. He just released an album that has 40 songs on it. It's basically the last 20 years of all of his stuff. Highly recommend you check that out. Talk. We're going to do lightning talks. So you're saying, hey, they need to be faster. We're doing 10-minute lightning sessions. And we're going to have panels. We're going to do some cosplay, some trivia. Jeff is actually going to host some community zone, just chats. We want to fill up those 7x7. We want to do the better together, the together mode with teams as well. And we're actually going to build a lobby in SharePoint Spaces for all the fun and games and everything that's going on. And we'll have foreign language support as well. So basically those, be able to know what's going on and jump into things. Well, it'll be a mix of live events and meetings so that we can actually get serious engagement. But people are going to be dressing up for cosplay, the music and the DJs. It's going to be, as well as trivia. You know, we've got Martin doing trivia. Lots of really fun, awesome stuff. So Party Central, it's going to be a blast. Hope everybody joins, checks it out. You can, the link is live now. If you go to collabshow.com, you'll see the link. It's been posted in LinkedIn as well as Facebook as well. But you should probably see that getting shared around. I would definitely invite everybody in the Boston user group to join us. And there's plenty of ways to volunteer as well. So if anybody wants to get more involved, we've got a lot of different rooms going. Yeah, should be a blast. And with that, let's open up for any final questions or anything.
We should do a Hollywood Squares.
Yeah,
can we talk? I'll be doing Rizzos.
Right. All right. Good times. Good times.
All right, everyone. Don't forget to unmute yourself if you have conversations. Now's the time to ask those questions. Please feel free to just, even if you want to just say hello, please feel free to do that as well.
So Dave, did you drag half of Staples into this group today?
Yes, I did. But you have to understand, Paul, you already know, but you have to understand, we use live events heavily. We have our own production studio, as in, if you actually go to my session on M365, I actually have images of our production studio. We have a green room, the whole 9 yards. We can actually rival, doing things like CNN and ESPN. And so we have, when I did the talk, and this was back in May, so May 28th, we already had 50 events that was professionally produced at Staples. Since then, we've had another good 20-25 since then. We're easily going to hit well over 100 internally. So when you brought up the CDC, as far as we use Hive, we use Telestream for allowing us to have full control of the actual end user experience. We have 2 servers running, so we definitely have an interesting setup specifically for it. As far as video capture cards for those servers, we're using Magewell. A lot of information has been going through, but Jamie, who's also on right now, has actually been kind enough to create a how-to. She's actually doing a couple training sessions around live events coming up next week. So when you were showing that, gal, and I could feel the absolute draw to it. So it's awesome that you're willing to share with our users, and the user group is definitely very much appreciated.
Yeah, I second that. I also have a question for you guys. Was there anything special that had to be done at the tenant level from like a geo-redundancy standpoint that you did to optimize for this event?
I was going to let Ryan answer, but
yeah. I could answer that one. Yeah, we didn't really have to do anything. We didn't do anything as far as like the geo redundancy. It's just the team's live events just ran and it worked. We had some reports of some things being a little slower to respond in some cases when we have content coming from the other side of the world, but it still just kept working. We didn't really have a whole lot of major issues with geolocations.
Awesome. Anybody else have any questions?
Fortunately,
this is unusually quiet for this group.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I didn't realize that they were all of a sudden shy. But then again, I
just
have
blown
to
away.
Blown away.
It's quite impressive what you guys accomplished. Amazing.
Good to hear your voice, Jamie.
Hey, Paul. Good to see you.
It looks like Andrea actually put there's some questions in the chat. People are a little bit shy, so that's fine. Did you organize events by skill level?
So we did when people would fill out their session details, they would choose what audience. So they could say end user, power user, developer, IT. And so when we originally were building the tracks, like those 14 English tracks, we absolutely were trying to organize things by a number of matrices. We were trying to get SharePoint tracks with SharePoint sessions and team stuff with team stuff and Power Platform with Power Platform. And then on top of that, we were also trying to get the levels in such a way that we weren't mixing things where it'd be super deep and then high level. We were trying to make it such that people wouldn't have to bounce around too much. So we were kind of trying to do, as an example, I think we had most of our sessions were either Teams or SharePoint, And when I say most, I think Teams was over. I think there were more than 70 sessions of just Teams. If that gives you an idea of how much content we had. And so of Teams, we would try and there wasn't just one track of Teams. We would break it out and be able to say dev versus IT versus end user versus power user. But we had to be a little bit creative to kind of fill a lot of that in at the same time. We weren't comfortable enough to say this is that track. We went with kind of a more generic mile marker to kind of represent the marathon a little bit.
We also had to try to appease, the speaker's preferred time slot in which to speak, yes. Right? As well as the location, which 8-hour block they were in, so that we and then align producers with that and whatnot.
Yeah, one thing we did as well is when it came to scheduling, we tried to group similar topics, as in, development, power user, administration type things, as much as we could in the same track, as we called it, the same mile. But in the end, we had so many time requests and things that we just we'll kind of stick it close to this other one. So I'm sure we had some overlaps and things people may want to do, but it's like when you've got 400 plus sessions, trying to squeeze them all in at all hours of the day got a little interesting at times.
Yeah, that's I think probably one of the biggest concerns that I know I had was just the sheer mechanics of it all, because of the fact you had people, speakers from all across the world, different languages, the whole 9 yards, in a single stretch of 36 hours, as in there is no breaks, at least at like the SharePoint conferences back in the day, and Ignite more recently, you at least have a gap, called nighttime, that you can actually recharge and reload. But in this case, it was a marathon in every sense of the word.
Yeah, well, I'll say that I think between Ryan and Joel and I, we had reached a point at the end of our first day as APAC is coming online, where it was like, okay, Ryan, you go ahead and go to sleep, and Joel and I were feeling fairly comfortable with the operations, and then the red button would get pressed, right, and that room essentially would get shut down, and Joel and I are recovering from that, but thankfully Ryan put in an architecture that we could recover from quickly. So we were able to leverage Sessionize to get that schedule updated and move people around. But again, we're doing that at 1 a.m. our time. We had been online for we had really been awake for almost 24 hours at that point. So it was a very interesting experience.
Well, I'll throw my hat in the ring. I'll definitely help you guys out next time. I'm all for it.
Me too. Glad to hear it.
Awesome. Yeah, people who are wondering, is it technically difficult? It's not technically difficult to produce. It's absolutely something you can learn in less than an hour. In fact, I think we learned one of the lessons over and over again, which is mute. Mute is such a important thing to figure out.
Another thing that comes to mind that I know at Staples has come up multiple times is the fact that only one person can share their screen in a live event. As soon as someone else shares a screen, bam, it's gone.
Bam, it's gone. Yeah,
it's gone. They need to be able.
There's
to
no queue.
Also,
yeah,
there's no queue for that, and that's hopefully you guys slammed into Microsoft on that especially.
Yeah,
because there has to be a queue for screen sharing as well.
In fact, what's annoying is it looks like you have a queue for your content, but it's not a queue. It's more of a template that you can fit stuff into. Even it's called a queue, but it's not. It's kind of misleading.
It behaves like a regular Teams meeting, and in reality, is what it is that once one person shares, as soon as the next person starts sharing, it immediately takes over. So it's one of those things. I don't know how long it's going to take them to revamp, but it's definitely one of those things we explained to them. Yeah, we need that queue for content as well. So because otherwise, the problem you run into those as part of that transition as well, there is a blip where it says, "Oh, this live event will resume shortly," just because as it's transitioning, as soon as one person says, "Hey, they want to start sharing," the other person's share gets disconnected while they're trying to pick out which content they want to share, which screen they're sharing, and then until they get that back up again. So there is a time frame where it says, "Oh, there's nothing available," which, if you want a high production value event, that's not desirable.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And,
So-
and just from a it's not a bug, it's a feature standpoint, there has been at least one instance that I was in a meeting where somebody was sharing stuff on their screen that they really shouldn't have been sharing on their screen. So I was able to quickly share my screen and then turn off my share to kick off their screen share because they didn't realize that they had it on.
Wow.
So, you know,
Wow.
it's a feature.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you know, I think the features, just like this meeting started with muting all attendees, right? And that's a great feature. But like me, it would have been great if somebody could have unmuted me when I didn't realize that I was muted quick enough to unmute myself, right?
Yeah.
I think it's little things like that would go a long way to just making the production or the producer's experience a little easier.
Yeah, so I can speak a little bit to that. I can tell you from a compliance standpoint, the ability to turn on someone else's camera or microphone is not going to be a feature you will ever see in this product.
Right.
That's
a compliance and privacy issue.
We talked when we talked with Microsoft. We told them like, okay, yeah, we understand why it's not enabled, but even just for the option to say, hey, as a speaker, I want to opt in to at least let them control the microphone, because I know there are other meeting applications that actually let you do that. If it's one of those things, if the moderator, for example, mutes somebody, it'll let them unmute them. So it's just kind of,
If you're the one who did it, right?
But yeah, just depending on who did it. If they muted themselves, then they did it on purpose. But it's one of those things. There are options. How they're going to implement it, who knows?
Yeah.
And in our use case, when our event started, we did have a technical issue, not of our making, and we did transition some of our rooms over into meetings for an hour or so. And it was an interesting. It was interesting just from a scientific perspective, just to evaluate human behavior of what occurs in a meeting with close to 250 attendees in it, right? And what that experience truly is like when the attendees are random and they're from all around the globe, and how they behave in that meeting versus and the impact on a speaker versus say a live event. And I can say that attendees in those meetings were saying, gosh, why aren't they using live events? And we're like, hey, we're trying to use a live event. But it was interesting. That's one case where it would have been great to mute everyone, unmute our speaker, and continue rolling. I think the attendee experience would have been a little better. But that was part of understanding live events and meetings and the difference. It was good to see the attendees pick up on that as well.
Amy, you brought up a good point. Why don't you unmute and talk about that, because you had more insight into that situation with the presenters, the 10 presenters.
You're going to hear my dinner cooking in the background. So we when you're a producer on a live event, you can only see 10 videos of your presenters, even if more than 10 people are presenting. So it just becomes a bit of a challenge when you're running larger broadcasts that have, I'm on call sometimes with 20 presenters. So I have to make sure I tell anyone over 8, turn off your video so that I can at least see who the next presenter is and turn them on.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, makes sense.
I think we've experienced some events lately where we have a fairly well-defined run of show, who's going to speak when, that kind of thing. But we've begun to think about, alternate solutions around bringing in larger audiences and then layering in those audiences into a single event, how that might happen, especially as we gear up for these virtual parties. Really want to bring the masses together, and 49 by 49 might not be enough.
Interesting.
All right. Any other questions? All right.
I think everyone's face is just pretty much melted off with the amount of information that just got presented.
I got one question for you guys. What do you guys think about cosplay? Anybody thinking about that?
I've done it in the past. I was
so
Wesley
in.
from.
Oh, awesome. Excellent. I wanted at least to hear one person say that it was cool.
Yeah, I'm in Orlando, and I'm definitely
Joel, I'm in too.
Awesome. Excellent. Very good. Very good.
I'm definitely in for karaoke too. I heard that earlier.
Yeah.
I've been trying to figure out how to do karaoke over Teams, and people keep telling me it's going to be a disaster if I do it. So.
Yeah, the timing is going to be off.
You almost need people to be on mute and sing along, but then who gets to hear it? Does that work? It's like you can hear the song and sing to it, but nobody gets the whatever happens if it's on mute.
Yeah, that'd be definitely interesting for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I don't know if you guys have run into it, but it's been my experience that whenever I do the sharing system audio feature, Teams seems to get a little flaky when doing that. And my microphone gets a little shady and stuff like that. So I'm always very quick to toggle that on and off, only for the pieces that I absolutely need it for. And I think you'd need to see some improvements around that for your karaoke.
Agreed.
Yeah. Well, I think the DJ will just have to do some pretty cool music, and then we can do some dancing, I think.
That's right.
Virtual dancing ought to work all right, because then it doesn't have to be totally in sync. It's okay to look and see people not being in sync to the music.
All right.
I like to boogie.
Makes it even more humorous.
Yeah.
We've got a few closing slides to go through, but then after that we're gonna turn off the recording, and we're just gonna have a kind of a round table where everybody can just chill and hang out. So we can do a lot more Q&A there if you guys are interested in hanging out. But thank you very much for the presentation. It was awesome. There were, as mentioned before, lots of brains melting all over the place. So thank you for that. That's kind of what we go for here. So,
thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Thank you very much.
And with that, all right, can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Excellent. There we go. All right, so we have some upcoming community events that we want to talk about. And we have Inspire. That's coming up. Wow, that's just next week, right?
Yes.
So we've got Inspire, and that's going to be on the 21st and 22nd. We've got Microsoft Ignite coming up in September. And the Women in IT Pros monthly call happens every month with the more information available at their AKA link that's up here. And also M365 Saturday in Philly is going to be online. So that should be interesting. And that's going to be also on July 1st. Same day as Inspire. Okay.
21st.
Cool. 21st. Yes, that's right.
Oh, sorry.
Go.
It's a 3-day event, not the 24th, 23rd. 3 days. It's not just a 1-day event.
Which one? The
Philly.
The Philly one?
21 through 23. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, wow. Okay. Good to know. Thank you, Chrissy.
You're welcome. Not as big as VM, but they're working towards it.
Awesome.
I'll be there. I'll be speaking.
Nice.
Are there any other
I'll be speaking.
are there any other events that we're missing here? Anybody know of anything else coming up?
August 27. M365 virtual community launch party.
There you go.
Nice.
Yeah, that'll be great.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely we'll add that to our slides and we'll keep that in our deck.
Excellent.
So thank you for that. Anything else? Anybody? All right. Cool. We have the Rhode Island SharePoint group. They meet on the first Tuesday of every month, and that's hosted by a friend of our group, DRC Hess. So she presented for us a couple of months ago. That was really good stuff. They got a cool new logo. I like that. We've got the Hartford Office 365 user group. That's hosted by Jared Matfis on the last Wednesday or Thursday of every month. So I guess you got to check their meetup to get the specifics on when that's happening. And of course, the Granite State user group, which is on the first Thursday of every month and hosted by Julie Turner and Jim Wilcox. Yeah. Then we have these other groups. We don't have specific times or dates for these guys, but at all of these websites, you can get in touch with the communities there and find out news about when they'll get together for meetings. Power BI user group. And coming up for next month, we have No Code and Lots of Fun, Compelling Business Solutions with Office 365 being presented by David Feldman. That's going to be on August 20th. So that's our next session, third Thursday of the month, and it'll be here online, hosted in Teams, as always. That should be good stuff. So with that, anybody having any issues or questions that they wanted to ask about Teams or Office 365 or anything like that? I'll actually get it started. And this is going to be a total noob question because I'm just starting to get involved in Power BI. And I created a measure in Power BI because I saw a video and the video told me you should always create things as measures and not as columns. And I now am trying to use that measure as a slicer. And for some reason, it's not letting me do that. Does anybody know why it's not letting me do that? Did I miss a setting somewhere, or is that a limitation of measures that they can't be used as slicers? Anybody know? Any Power BI guys in the audience?
I'm Power BI, but I'll have to get back to you on that. I'm drawing a blank right now. Sorry, Mike.
Okay, Mike. What data type is the field?
It's numbers, numeric. So the content that I'm pulling in has a column called period, and the period field has a year and then a Q and then the number of the quarter after it. So what I did is I created two measure fields that actually break that out. So I now have a measure called year and a measure called quarter. So I can do different slicers that way as well. Or that's what I'm attempting to do. It's currently not working.
Is it possible because the field you're going to slice against is a combination of year and date, you know, with the text in there, that it's just not seeing a match?
Well, no, because the measure is going against the same table. So the data should be associated. No, that's an interesting thing. Maybe I didn't associate it with that table properly. Okay, that's a path for me to go examine. Interesting. Yeah, I'm just getting started on that stuff, but I really like it. It's been really fun. It's amazing how beautiful of a chart you can make really, really fast.
The fact that Joel, the one that Joel showed of the Power BI was pretty, you know,
Yeah.
that was whack. That was amazing. That was really cool.
And on the subject of Power BI, the current month's release just came out, so a lot of more goodies.
Okay.
Interesting.
Nice. Well, I'm trying to get caught up on the base goodies, so. Awesome. Any other questions?
Ooh.
Tips?
Oh,
Gotcha.
okay, I actually have a question, and it was a news release that just recently came out from the ECJ regarding basically nixing the privacy shield. So I just have thoughts of like, anyone else have thought about that? Or have you seen it? Here,
This is news to me, so I'm not real sure what you're referring to.
Okay, I just put the news release that I had read earlier in the day in the chat. So it's going to have an impact on. It's basically the cloud services from the U.S., including Microsoft, are basically not really GDPR compliant.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That'd be an interesting read.
Any security experts out there? Which I am not.
Mm-hmm.
I would have to look into it. I would probably call in the help. I used to have the email address of the leader of the blue security team of Microsoft. I don't know. I think I lost that though. He would have definitely been able to help answer that question.
Of course, it's something really, really recent. So.
Yeah, I mean, Microsoft has whole teams dedicated to data privacy and compliance.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be too concerned that there wouldn't be a response.
Yeah, I'm looking through this article that you put up here. I'm looking to see when this goes into effect. Because I'm sure, as Dimitri stated, Microsoft has a ton of people that focus just on compliance like this. And I'm sure they will be moving as quickly as possible to do what they can to get their data centers compliant.
And yeah, I would agree as well. Yeah, it's just that when I first saw it, it's like, whoa.
Yeah. So it's always a race to see if the vendors can make their data compliant before the compliance rules go into effect. You know,
yeah,
and
sure.
hopefully that the compliance rules are laid out clear enough that there's a consensus amongst the security community as to how to actually comply with those rules. Because some of the regulations are much better laid out than others.
Just saying.
Yeah, and I'll leave it at that for right now. We could talk more about that later. Anybody hiring or looking for work? Anybody? Bueller? Yes, you there with a raised hand. Is that Rachel Cooper?
It is.
Hi, Rachel.
Hi. So I'm not hiring, but my company, CNC Software, is opening up a rec very, very soon for a security architect. And you'd have to work with me, so I hope that's okay.
There it goes.
Sorry. But no, where it's pretty much the only posting I think we're going to have for a while. But it is coming up, and I know people are looking for work. Yeah, just check, go to mastercam, mastercam.com, and under the career section, it'll be posted on our ADP portal. So.
And what exactly is the position?
It's a security architect. So you need to know, you know, we're all Office 365 implementing. We're getting our E5 licenses in a few weeks. So we need somebody to like hit the ground running. I need help. Help.
Nice. All right. So, so you'd have to work with Rachel, but then you also get to play with BattleBots on occasion. So that's cool.
Well, when we can actually go in the office.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, you may end up coming in the office one day and like Witch Doctor from BattleBots will be at your office. So that's kind of cool.
That's so freaking cool.
It's so cool.
Awesome. All right. Anybody else looking to hire? Anybody looking for a job?
No, but I want to know how you get into the BattleBots audience.
I don't know. They actually came and brought Witch Doctor, the whole team. We did a Teams meeting, company-wide meeting. They came in, did a whole panel session in front of us, and then they set up the cage outside in our parking lot and had the bot doing some crazy stuff. And then an email went out maybe like a couple hours later because our video team was making it make fire along the driveway, and they said just stay away from the driveway for a while. It was kind of crazy.
All right. All right. Well, with that, once again, I just want to give a huge thanks to Turn Digital for being our platinum sponsor and helping us out with this event. So thank you guys. We really appreciate it. And that brings us up to the raffle.